Hi, everyone. Welcome on the Head of Sales Diary podcast. And today we have Conor, sales team lead at lemlist. And before you meet Conor in person, a couple of fun and professional facts about him. So first, he can speak 3 languages, English, Irish, and Spanish. And now, Conor, you have to say something in Irish to us. I know it's like language nobody can understand and distinguish. Secondly, he used to be a professional hurling sportsman, which is like, wow, I've never heard about this sport before, but I know that it's like very, very Irish one. And in terms of the professional ones, so he switched to sales from being an English teacher. He was the youngest sales professional in the entire company when he used to work at Hotjar. And he made $500,000 in ARR thanks to one cool and simple thing he used to do on outreach. And that's where I give the floor to you and you tell us, what was the feature?
Yeah. So the actual the piece that I used in the outreach was a GIF, and it was just a very simple GIF of me waving. So kind of give an introduction, and then give a GIF of me waving, and then give a bit of an explanation as to why I'm reaching out. It was more so used, to be completely honest, across my previous experience at Hotjar and now in lemlist, more so for people who had signed up for free trials. And it was just a really kind of I think people just liked it. It was a nice pattern interrupt. It was like, again, the gift just goes automatically. You don't need to click on anything. And yeah, a lot of the meetings that I was able to book from them and then subsequently closing the deal. They all mentioned that they really liked the GIF and they had shared it internally, whether it was with their team, whether they were going to use it personally. So it was it was a really cool thing to see, just that it helped bring a lot of success for me, but hopefully it has led to a bit of success for other salespeople.
Okay, well, that's cool that sometimes like very trivial or sometimes extraordinary things you do, they bring the success. That's amazing. So let's start with a little bit of your personal background. And here's an interesting fact. When I used to live in Ukraine, my career started as a teacher of English. And then I subsequently switched to sales through marketing. Like, how did it happen for you? Why sales?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like when I talk with other people as well, like that's normally a conversation that we get into. And from my experience, anyways, it seems that a lot of people will say fall into sales, but they actually end up loving it once they get into it. So like I said, I'd originally moved to Spain as an English teacher. Then I started working with a startup in Valencia, and because of the startup or the nature of startups, you got to do a little bit of everything. You got to do whether it was like hosting, webinars, selling, obviously. And one thing for me that really I think that I enjoyed was talking to people and trying to would say build rapport, build relationships with people. And I think sales was the best thing for that. I think as somebody from Ireland, and I think I'm going to rely on the fact that I am Irish a lot in this, it's a very common thing, like we like to talk, we like to build relationships. And I think if that's something that you can have in your professional life, it's a very fulfilling and satisfying thing to do.
Interesting. Well, actually, this is how I decided also to go to marketing because, speaking love, this is the idea of having fun by talking to people. It's like something which is driving you in sales afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Recently, you got promoted from the senior account executive to a sales team lead at lemlist, which is like, wow, I loved lemlist. I have been using it for many years. I understand that the level of the company and everything is amazing. What was the biggest mindset shift for you from moving from the senior AE to a sales team lead?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think a really important point as well. Like if anybody's listening and maybe is in a similar position of whether looking to move from what we would call like an individual contributor position to like a management role. I think the biggest mind shift change is the lack of control, for want of a better word. When you're an individual contributor, you have a lot of things in your control. You can manage how the deal goes. You can manage your interaction and stakeholder management. But when you are a team lead, or whatever it might be, any other type of management role, you do need to, we'll say, have trust, have faith in your team that they're going to do a good job, and you really do need to provide them some level of autonomy. So it's more so you're relying on other people doing the job, or looking to do what they need to do to close the deal, rather than you would have been the one in charge of that, or looking after your own deals when you were an individual contributor. So I think that's the biggest change, is the kind of learning to let stuff go, and trust other people, and relinquish a bit of control.
When we were selecting the topic on what we're going to speak, you said that one of your key focuses right now is to building sustainable sales teams, like sustainable performance, helping people achieve results, but at the same time, not pushing them to the edge. What is sustainable kind of management or sustainable team for you? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is, we're all people, we're all humans at the end of the day. I think you need to be very conscious of, and I think I am in a bit of a privileged position, because I have moved from the AE role into a team lead role within the same company. So I have experience, like I know what it's like to be on the deals within lemlist. So having that experience and coming into a leadership role, you really need to be. I think the key word is empathetic, and have a lot of empathy for the team, understand the stresses that they're going through, some of the difficult things to deal with. I think one of like the mantras that we try and live by within the team is do the best that you can when you can, because we're not always going to be at 100%, whether that's professional problems, personal problems. I think we need to be really aware that, like I said, everyone's going to deal with stuff in their life at different stages of their life. So it's very important to, of course, demand a high level of performance, but be empathetic towards people if you do see that they might be struggling with something. And I think another key point alongside the empathy is to have kind of the encouragement, which is a key and a really big factor that I try and live by with the sustainable performance, or sustainable management. Is I feel like a lot of times people who get into management, you might want to prove yourself, or you might want to show that you know all the information. So when we get into, say, for example, like a deal review, or how did you think that call went, a lot of managers will be they might be predisposed to kind of talk about, I know we shape it as areas of improvement, but you're kind of telling people, you didn't do this, or you missed out on this. But one thing that I really want to focus on is this idea of encouragement. Tell them what they did right, even asking a question, what did you do right? Just to try and build this sense of, understanding, empathy, and I think positive reinforcement across the team.
Interesting. And it's something I wanted to ask you in the end of our discussion, but as long as you started to speak about the empathy, like a little bit of a challenge here. Sometimes empathy is very tricky because, well, people can start using it, in a way, because thinking, oh, you're an empathetic leader, meaning I don't need to be accountable. I don't need to be responsible for something. I can rely on my manager. So where is this kind of balance between being empathetic, but at the same time driving accountability, and not ending up with people being kind of like, kids who need to be encouraged every time?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good point. And I feel like, whether it's living in both worlds of the extreme, whether it's like whether it's negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, we do need to strike a balance. And I think that approach of so I think it's one of the books that I've read as well, but it's talking about this idea of like radical candor, of we need to be very, I think, upfront in every way. We need to set expectations, and we need to be transparent. If there is a point that I think you did really well, then there is going to be positive reinforcement, and I'm not going to skip over that fact, because I believe that you deserve your recognition and you should feel good about that. But if there is an area where you're slacking, and we've had those expectation setting calls in the beginning, well then, you need to be aware that you will be held accountable for that. It's not just like, positive reinforcement, letting people do what they need to do, giving them full reign or full autonomy. There's a reason why we have managers there. There's a reason why we have leaders there, to try and guide people. So yeah, I think definitely encouragement is a huge thing for me, and empathy is a massive part of that. But having the initial conversations of I'm here for you, I want to help you thrive, I want to help you succeed. But it's also really about we need to set expectations,
Mhm.
and I think keep referring back to those expectations. Sometimes we can talk about what do we want to do, or what do you expect from me, what do I expect from you, and we can kind of let that go. So one of the things is like a practice that I do at the end of each month, sorry, at the beginning of the next month, what we'll do in the team meeting is we'll actually go over the point of did we do what we said we were going to do?
Mhm.
So like when you said to me, what did you expect of me? So one of the points that my team has mentioned before is like I think they said honesty. So be transparent around if there's any changes, any shifts within the departments, the organization, anything like that. And I've been very upfront in communicating around them. And then one of the things I said was, say, for example, we needed to increase our outbound productivity. And we had a review of that and kind of said, yeah, we can see in the numbers here in the volume metrics that you've done that. So it's very important to kind of remind people that although we're going to be empathetic, you will be held accountable, but it's not just me kind of like pointing the finger. We can come together and collectively set expectations, but we are going to go back and review them so that we don't just run wild and
Mhm.
nobody knows what they're doing.
And how do you reward people apart from the financial rewards which the salespeople get?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, and I think something that if people are listening to this, I would really love if they took it away that I think give people credit, but give them credit in a public forum. I think it's one thing to say that, for example, if myself and yourself are having a conversation, that I say to you, I think you did a really good job. And of course, that's going to feel good. But if we have a situation where, because again, we have a team, we have a wider sales department, we're going to have kind of like weekly or monthly catch ups across the department. It's really good to try and put that in and give them shout outs. So, one of the things we do in lemlist will be kind of like it's either a weekly or a bi weekly update across the entire company. So, what we can do is like message the person who's going to do that. And within the sales department piece of it, you can give a shout out to somebody who's done a really good job.
Mhm.
So it's really important to try and like, I've noticed your good work. I want to recognize that. Let's build a positivity and let's try and have this culture of if you do something good, it's going to be rewarded, you're going to be picked out. Because I feel like sometimes it can almost be the opposite where it's like if something bad happens, then, everyone knows about it or, everyone's involved. So you want to try and strike that balance and make sure that everybody feels seen.
Mhm. And how is your team currently structured? Like, give us a sneak peek.
Yeah, so right now there are three people on my team. We're in the process of hiring a fourth, and we're looking after, so it's AEs, and we are looking, sorry, full cycle AEs, and we're looking after the EMEA markets.
Mhm.
So Lemlist will be hiring a team well, it's in the process of hiring the team for the US. So we're going to be looking mainly at the European markets, Middle East, and Africa as well, and APAC. So pretty much everything that isn't, I'd say within the next 6 to 12 months, everything that isn't the US or the French speaking markets, I'm going to look after that team.
And do you have full cycle A's? Do you have separately SDRs on the team?
No, so right now it's only full cycle AEs. Yeah, there's no SDRs, so that even adds another layer of complexity to the AE role itself, because obviously in some organizations you'll have somebody doing the prospecting for you or trying to get you some more meetings, but in this case we actually have to try and manage the team to build out pipeline, commit to outbound.
Mhm.
Working for a company like Lemlist, sometimes that can be a bit of a difficult one to try and inspire, because the inbound flow is ridiculous. So
Mm.
people will make target strictly off of the inbound flow. But we are trying to build out an environment and a team of, we want to source the bigger deals, always striving for more, and trying to source the what we would call kind of the ideal
Mhm.
deals that we want.
And how are the targets structured? So is it only financial or do you have something else like outbound and something like this?
Yes, so we have the majority of it is essentially, well, the majority of it is linked to target attainment, but then we have a breakdown for so different factors within that. So for example, right now within Lemlist you can do monthly, quarterly, or yearly. deals or contracts, we reward higher for the annual commitments, because obviously that means more for the company. And then we have certain accelerators in place if you close a deal with what we would call kind of our ICP, which would mainly be sales teams. But also again, like you mentioned, if it's an outbound deal. So we are trying to link the financial incentives and offering more of that to where we want the team to go. And mainly the goal of that is to do bigger annual deals. And if they can be sourced in, through outbound or cold outreach, that's perfect.
Well, I have like a vision, and currently I'm also having a full cycle AEs. And before that, when I was leading a team for another company, I had a very strict division between SDRs and AEs, and then customer success managers who would grow the deals. And I think it's like the most effective way to build outbound, because like when you have an AE, he would still focus primarily on closing the deals, but not like very much motivated. Do you think it's like a problem for you or not?
Yeah. I agree with you in my previous experience. So I did work as an SDR, and we would try and source the deals for the AEs, which I think was very effective. Right now for lemlist, I think our situation is a little bit different because we sell a sales engagement platform, which a large part of that is to do with cold outreach. Having the ability to have the AEs go and do that and be full cycle AEs, so they know exactly, because when you get on a call and if a prospect says to you, can you show me like one of the campaigns that you're using? And if one of our reps doesn't have it, or they're scrambling, it looks a bit unprofessional. It's like, okay, what are we selling here? Do we actually use it? So I think as we grow and scale, it will be something that we consider and that we look into. But right now, the whole idea of Lemlist is to be quite lean and to, give some more responsibility to the AEs and have them source that themselves, which again, literally something that we're dealing with right now is how do we build out a process of, making people commit to outbound and going and getting those deals. But then also another side of that is in my previous experience, maybe an SDR would source a deal that's like not up to the AE's expectations. So there's always that balance of like, well, do you want to do it or do you want someone else to do it? So, but yeah, I think the main thing right now, which is really beneficial for our reps, is they get a very close experience with the tool that they are selling. They use it on a daily basis. So when a prospect comes, you can see the level of expertise. You can see it straight away that, whether it's pieces of information, best practices, and it strengthens the overall handling of the deals. So yeah, I feel like right now we are in a good place. I don't know if we need the SDRs right now. I think things are progressing really positively. And just for a bit of context, we are building out a bit more of an outbound motion. So we'll do a lot of, scheduled in cold calling sessions to use the Lemlist platform and really try and get there. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Yeah. Well, I fully support you. I think that everybody should be doing, I'm personally doing outreach myself. And I think this is the way which helps you to be on top of what is happening. Because like 5 years ago, I remember my first outbound, I created a very generic, like kind of an email. And then I pushed it and I realized that I have messed up with the industry. And I was planning to send to hospitals, but I selected hospitality. And so I have sent it to like, I don't know, to hotels and everything. Still, I signed a deal out of this like very shitty outreach. Now everything has changed. So you have to be on top of how it's happening, like triggers and everything. What it would be the ratio of people on your team reaching and not reaching the targets?
Yeah. So right now so like I said, Lemlist is we are very privileged. We're in a very good position. So right now, everybody on the team is hitting target. It's just a question of who can hit the highest
Yeah.
level of attainment. So yeah, like I said, we are in a really privileged position. What we do want to do is we want to build on top of that. Like we said, using the outbound, try and source more bigger deals and add on top of that because, naturally as we scale and as we hire more AEs, the pie or the availability of the deals or the accounts will start to get thinner and thinner. So while everything is going really good, I think it's an excellent time to really try and prepare the process and structure how we want to work in the future. So it's kind of like a forward planning motion. But yeah, right now everybody's hitting targets, so the morale is quite high within the company, and yeah, the growth overall is really impressive.
Okay, but like still, you would have like A players, so those who overachieve the targets and those who are like fine. Usually, these are the two types of people who require different types of management. Can you like a little bit elaborate what is the key difference and how do you coach those who are A players and those who are not?
Yeah. No, and I think that's an excellent question. Because it's literally what a leadership or a management role boils down to. How do you deal with the people that you have on your team? I think the one that I want to start with is the overachiever or is the top performer. They will not require, I think, as hands-on help sometimes. So like I said about the shift in the mindset earlier on, people moving into management or in leadership roles, we want to prove that we know the most, or like I moved up into this role, I want to prove that I'm still the best rep. And me going on to a session with the top performer on my team, and I don't know, trying to, we'll say, like, stake my claim or show that I know, or did you think of this, or all this type of stuff. It's I think it's counterproductive because that person is doing a fantastic job. I think what we need to do for those people is we just need to remove as much as we can for them. So enable them as much as possible. If they're having issues, say, for example, with a quote, with software, dealing with a prospect, handling a deal, it's just trying to help them and remove things as much as possible and let them sell. Let them focus on what they're actually there for, especially if they're overachieving because they've already proved that they can do it. So that would be my thing in terms of, we'll say, more of a hands-off approach, enable them as much as possible. And I think really trying to let them get to the point, or get to that area of understanding what they need to do. Just because I think there's a lot of value in understanding that. I think everybody has the answers. The idea is that everybody knows what they should do, or at least if they're following their gut instinct. And it's all about, as a manager, really trying to enable them to get there. As an overachiever, that's easier. I think switching to the other side, which maybe people, they're not performing as well as you would like them to, is I think it's really important to, I would say, like we said, had this idea of communication, of transparency, be very, I would say, open and direct. And in an actual meeting, say, we could take one in my case, for example, everybody's at target, but we have people who are maybe doing much more than other people. So what a conversation like that might go is to more so say, like, hey, you're over target, you're doing fantastic, I think you're doing a really good job. However, I think there are some areas of improvement that we need to discuss, because as we begin to grow and as we develop, I can see some of these we'll say areas becoming bigger issues if we don't try and address them now. So it's more so, I think the communication applies for both the overachiever and maybe the underperformer, but the underperformer especially, we don't want to get to a situation where we feel like we've lost the run of it, or we don't know what's going on, or it's gone out of our hands. It's a really important thing to be upfront and be clear. And I think communicate it as directly as possible, because I think, as working as an AE, sometimes maybe managers think, oh, am I being a bit too harsh there, or. But I think an open and honest communication is something that's going to be the most successful overall. So, yeah, I know I kind of went kind of in between the both of them there. I think as the overachiever, you really need to let them work towards figuring it out. Because again, they're doing really well, and I think they'll have the answers. Sometimes they just need to be pushed in the right direction, enable them, and trust them, and then provide them with autonomy. And then maybe for the underperformer, I think clear communication, goal setting in terms of maybe where we are and where we want to be, and maybe trying to be a bit more hands-on with, we'll say, some of the deal reviews, some of the deal management, and just ask them, like, how do you feel,
Mhm.
with your current level of performance? Where do you want to go? And really try and set a goal or a plan where they would like to end up.
When you set up the goals, how do you make sure that they are like ambitious, but at the same time realistic? Because like maybe in case everybody's overachieving the targets, it can be also a very good like way to make them a little bit higher, but at the same time not to depreciate and not to like, push a little bit the team.
Yeah. I think people will always it's and again, I know we discussed that earlier on, the balance, like the how do we find the right level of where people want to be. I think that there will always be it maybe goes back to the initial understanding, or the initial discussion of that, what matters to them.
Hmm.
So you might have more people who will say are more like financially driven. You might have people who are more career oriented. They want to get promotions. You might have people that want to develop specific skills. They want to branch out into something else. So we really need to understand the why to, we'll say, set the reasoning as to where we're going to go. So it always, I feel like it always comes back to that. Like, I know you're saying there in terms of setting the goals. Okay, so we can set a goal. Say, for example, I don't know, again, we have the incentives associated with outbound, with working with the sales teams, but how do we make somebody, we'll say, get on board with that and work towards that? And it's really about understanding why. So why are they here? Why do they want to go there, or why should they go for that goal, and stretch them a bit further? So to have that discussion. So I think having that initial conversation as to what matters to you, understanding what matters to them, and then I think tying it to the actual goal setting itself will really be able to help them get there, and we'll say help them overachieve. And I think also leaving some space for, and again, this is more of it's important to talk about the balance of things, but leaving some space for pushback or for doubts, because we want to know if there's some doubts associated with it. We don't just want to say your target's gone up by 30%. Any questions?
Hmm.
It's, we want to try and have that, like we said, human conversation, that empathetic conversation. I understand that this is a bit of a step up, or it's a bit of a stretch, but remember what you told me before in the beginning, that you want to work towards, let's say, for example, getting up to like a corporate AE or a strategic AE. This is the type of progress that they're going to look for. These are the type of KPIs that they need. So it's always tying it back to them and relating it, because I think sometimes sometimes goals can be set a bit out of our hands.
Hmm.
So if somebody came to me, say, for example, the CEO or the VP came to me and said, yeah, we're open targets by 40%. Like, I'm not going to turn around and say no. I'm
Hmm.
not going to turn around and disagree. So it's more so, okay, we've gotten this information. How do I communicate this to the team, and how do I tie it back to the values that matter to them?
Well, I think it's like, well, for me, it's the same. This is something I was told by my manager when the targets were set up. He said, like, this is the thing you cannot argue with. So, like, it's the financial results with the company is building. I think what you said is important, to create an environment where people are feeling safe to ask the question and to challenge it, saying like, okay, but we need more help with this. Can you please, as a leader, enable me with more like inbounds, or with more support from an SDR to build the pipeline and everything? So that's why there should be the safe room. At the same time, there's a very thin edge with burnout. Like, when people are always like under stress, what do you do? What is like your habit, and what is your how do you say way to eliminate the burnout within your team?
Yeah, that's it's I think especially because with the sales team that we have, everybody works remotely, so we're not going into an office. I think that's a really key part to talk about, because when you're in an office environment and everybody can kind of come together and lean on each other. It's I think it's about having that environment for the open communication. So like you were saying, if there's any doubts, or people are frustrated, that they have the knowledge that they'll be safe and that they'll be heard and respected when they say that, or when they give maybe a complaint that they have. But one thing I always check in with in the one-on-ones is just to ask how people are feeling.
Hmm.
I think that's really important to get an idea of that. Some people will be very forthcoming and they will tell you exactly how they're feeling. You know, literally, you won't even have to say it. They'll just come on and they'll start talking because they're really frustrated with something, and that's fine. But there are some people, and again, it's about knowing the people on your team. Like, is somebody a bit more reserved? Do they not want to talk about that information? So it's really important. Again, you might just need to ask it, like, maybe it's like another, or, ask them another time, but really, like, how are you feeling? I know the workload has been pretty heavy this week, and just try and open it up, as gently as possible, because we really want to understand when people are frustrated or they have a safe space. I think to vent, like in sales, being able to vent is such a huge thing.
Hmm.
It's so important. And again, I think looking at the other side of that, if we don't provide that environment, or if we don't talk about setting a space where people can talk about how they're feeling, that just might turn into, I'll hold it internally. I don't feel like I can trust Conor. I don't want to speak to him. And then in 3, 4 months, they've left. And now all of a sudden we didn't know that they felt like that. We're a person down. I still have a full target that I need to hit. So even though it might be a bit uncomfortable for people, or even from like a managerial point of view, I think it's okay to ask those questions, and really set that expectation in terms of, look, we said we were going to be honest with each other. How are you feeling?
Well, it's all about empathy. Yeah. Like with empathy, you have to understand and you have to feel the people. You have to understand like what they're currently walking through, some personal problems and everything. If you had to choose between two things, and this is like, you cannot choose in between, because I know that you will say like, oh, it depends or
Yeah.
something. You can choose micromanagement or full autonomy. Let's say, is there a word, holocracy? Yeah, when like it's totally in the hands of the people and everything. What would you choose?
I think I would have to go with full autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
There are positives and negatives associated with both approaches. I feel like the people who are hired to work within the company, or are hired to work, for example, within the sales team, they've gone through multiple rounds of interviews. They've met a load of different people within the company. There's been very different check, or let's say skill or competency checks that have happened throughout that process. I would bet more on my team if I let them be fully autonomous
Mm-hmm.
than I would be if I micromanaged everything, because the worst experiences that I've had in any aspect of life is when somebody tries to micromanage. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be in a professional environment. It can be somebody, telling you what to do, not giving you space, not letting you breathe. I think it's the quickest way to make people remove themselves from a situation, whether it's in a everyday personal life or whether it's in a professional situation. So yeah, I would go full autonomy.
Okay, thank you. The last question, and it's like a final signature question from you for you. If you had to give one bold piece of advice for building sales teams that last, what would it be?
Hmm. Yeah, I think, and I do. I want to think of that one. I think when it's a bold piece of advice, um, I would say trust your gut. And what I mean by that is, for managers and leaders, I think we will all have this intuition as to whether we agree with something, whether we do, however we feel. I feel like, even especially early on in kind of like my managerial career, when you learn to, I think, understand how you feel, or the signals that your body's putting out about a lot of different situations, every time that you trust your gut, it's going to bring you the right way. And that might be in contrast to what is being said or what is being expected of you from within a company. I feel like, I know that's kind of a generic piece of advice, but if you stick with that and you say, okay, how does this make me feel? Because there's going to be situations, decision making that we will never have faced, or it's going to be in a different environment or a different scenario from what we've seen before. If you just learn to rely on yourself and think, okay, what are my values? What do I stand for? and then go from there and make your decision in terms of how you want to build out your sales team. So like we were talking about earlier before, if empathy is a big thing for me, I want to make sure that we have an empathetic environment, but I also want to make sure that there's accountability. I want to make sure that there's positive reinforcement. So it's all very tied back to my values. And once you can have that as the overarching theme, everything gets a bit easier in terms of the actual process that's going to be built out.
So trust your gut and subscribe for the Head of Sales Diary podcast to hear the stories of the true sales leaders. Thank you very much, Conor. It was very inspiring. And I can feel that you're a very good manager. Like you can feel it from the screen and from the way you're speaking. So I should say that your team is lucky to have you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think we're all trying our best out here, but hopefully, whoever's listening to this can take a bit of it away. And I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a really enjoyable experience.
Thank you. And listen to the podcast.